Dear Chinatown, you are the part of New York City that makes me feel most connected to my Chinese American history, and there's nothing like history than eating at the oldest dim sum restaurant in the city. My chopsticks are ready, my stomach's grumbling, and we're kicking off Friday night with a ride downtown on the subway. Okay, I'll take this time as we do the 10-minute walk from the Brooklyn Bridge City Hall subway station to give you a little lowdown on Chinatown history. So, New York City's Chinatown basically started popping up in the 1870s when a bunch of Chinese immigrants, mostly guys, settled around Mott Street down by Canal. The first person who really kicked things off was this guy named Ah Ken, who came in the 1850s and made a name for himself selling cigars and renting out bunks to new arrivals. Back then, it was mostly men who came over hoping to make some cash and then head back home, but they ended up building a tight community with social clubs and support groups to survive all the discrimination and tough times. And things slowed down a lot after the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, which basically shut the door on new immigrants for decades. But Chinatown kept growing slowly and eventually became this vibrant neighborhood full of culture, food, and history. And we've made it to Doyers Street, which was nicknamed the Bloody Angle because it's sharp bend, but it's also history for a hotspot for violent gang fights during the Tong aka gang wars. But today, we don't have to worry about any violence. We're just here for good eats at the oldest dim sum spot in Chinatown. So Nom Wah invited me for a filming collab, and when an institution as historic as this one reaches out to me, I am immediately on the way. So Nom Wah opened in 1920 and has become a neighborhood staple, so much so that it's reached tourist attraction status. And over the decades, it's evolved from a bakery and tea parlor into a full-scale dim sum destination and has been owned by the same family for generations. Special shout out to Victor, who currently owns the spot and welcomed us to the restaurant and picked out some of their specials. I'm basically your Chinese history teacher today because I'm also going to talk to you about how dim sum started. So it started way back during the Song Dynasty in southern China as little snacks that people would enjoy with tea at tea houses. And the name dim sum actually means touch the heart, which is kind of cute because these small dishes are meant to make you feel good and not just fill you up. Over time, it turned into this awesome social thing called yum cha, which, as the name says, literally means drink tea, where friends and family get together to sip tea and share a bunch of tasty bite-sized food. I also kind of related to like tapas, but Chinese style. Well, the food's starting to come, so we cannot let it get cold. And one of Vincent's first recommendations were these humongous fried spring rolls, so large in fact, it took some maneuvering to pick up. And our chopstick skills were clearly being put to the test with these dumplings as well. And okay, my absolute favorite dish from childhood is next, and it's a must order, known as chang fun or steamed rice rolls. Shrimp and beef are the OG fillings that I'd recommend getting. They're smooth and slightly chewy at the same time, so it's a great textural bite and flavorful because the dough really soaks up the soy sauce. But the true best sauce at dim sum that I personally think is slept on is the spicy mustard that's similar to wasabi and will shoot straight up your nose and clear your sinuses. It's different from your hot dog mustard though, and is much spicier, so beware. And after a brief intermission to uncomfortably capture my thumbnail shot, we've got another must order. So like I mentioned, dim sum is not proper without some tea, and I specifically like iced milk tea. So imagine black milk tea, bubble tea with a much stronger tea flavor though. I personally find drinking hot tea with hot piping dishes pretty tough, sorry to my ancestors, so I need a cold bev to balance the meal out. Okay, next is siu mai or shumai, which is definitely another staple of dim sum. So siu mai is a dim sum dumpling essentially made with flavorful mix of ground pork, shrimp, and mushrooms that are then wrapped in this yellow wonton skin. And then there's always the classic bright orange garnish, which could be crab roe or carrot. And another specialty of Nom Wah's is this giant roast pork bun or char siu bao, which is a staple of Chinese bakeries.
Oh man, hot boy.
Actually, char siu bao have been pretty viral in Chinatown recently. You may have heard of Wah, which is a Chinese bakery with lines down the block for their pineapple roast pork bun. And they deserve the hype. They are big pockets of satisfying, savory goodness, but they have knocked me out many times before. And as I'm scarfing down more dumplings, you may be wondering, where are the dim sum carts and the cart-pushing grannies? Yes, these carts. Fun fact, dim sum carts actually became a thing in the US, in Chinese hubs like SF and NYC, not China. And there's nothing like your brain half focused on eating and half focused on eyeing every cart that goes by, and then having to flag them down to get what you want before another table gets it. Personally, I do prefer going to dim sum with carts because it adds to the experience and feels a bit more nostalgic, but understandably, in a city like New York, where restaurants are petite, dim sum menus do just make more sense. And eating dim sum makes me a bit emotional. Not because I'm starting to get full, I swear, but because it's really an art form of my Chinese culture. Old school dim sum requires rolling, folding, and steaming, which takes serious skill and patience. But with today's fast-paced lifestyles and just younger generations, a lot of that craftsmanship is getting lost. So many places now rely on like frozen or mass-produced stuff just to keep up with demand, which is a bit sad to think less and less people know the techniques of our ancestors. So if you're eating at a dim sum spot like the historic Nom Wah, know that you're helping to keep a piece of Cantonese tradition alive. So as you saw from our massive spread, we went overboard on ordering. You know, when we've got a menu like dim sum and you can tell me I can order whatever I want, it's hard to show restraint. We also intentionally ordered a bit more so we'd have leftovers for the next meals and especially work lunches. Cooking for work lunch is one of the tasks I least look forward to. And with our bellies full, it's time to continue our Chinatown exploring. The rain will not deter me. So I don't live particularly close to Chinatown anymore, and I don't come around as often as I'd like. So anytime I do get to visit, I need to hit up a few spots, and you're joining me as I head to a few of my favorites. There's something about rainy New York City streets with the warm street and shop lights that makes me feel a bit fuzzy inside. Fuzzy enough to continue yapping on about more Chinatown facts. So today, Manhattan's Chinatown is home to about 90 to 100,000 people, making it the highest concentration of Chinese residents in the Western Hemisphere. Yes, I'm getting technical here. And it's a commercial hub with businesses like restaurants, grocery stores, souvenir shops, and specialty markets, though many of them face challenges from rising rents, online shopping, and an aging population. So it's even more important to continue supporting Chinatown. And speaking of history, this spot continues to make history as the first Asian American female-owned bookshop in the entire country. They specialize in works written by immigrants and diverse voices. And I will admit, I am a Kindle user, so I'm very rarely buying physical books these days, but I do make sure to come by You and Me every single time I'm in Chinatown because it's become a comfort spot. And I vividly remember it opening up during COVID in 2021, right around the same time that I came to appreciate my Asian American identity. And I never really thought about the importance of reading and consuming media of your culture, but it's truly like being seen through words. I also like stopping by to see what's new and then taking pictures of what intrigues me to check out later on my Kindle, like I mentioned. And without fail, you'll catch me looking at a cooking book. And truthfully, I am flipping for the aesthetic pictures, but hey, still counts. And it's a good way for me to keep tabs on new books from authors I've previously enjoyed reading from. So my favorite genre of books is Asian American cozy murder mysteries, which also means I should probably enter the contest for the most niche genre of interest. And as you've probably guessed, there aren't a ton of books in this category, so I've read a vast majority at this point. Alright, my camera roll now has some new books jotted down, but before we head out, I'd like to peek in their cozy reading nook and then peruse their extra goodies, like their pins, which man, if I had unlimited money, I'd be buying them all. And this was my first time seeing a dedicated stack of Asian records. They were sorted by country of origin, so that was a very cool final look through. Off to our final spot, and we're back in the rain. It's like 7:30 at this point, which is not late at all, especially for New York City, but it is interesting to see how quiet and somewhat empty Chinatown will get at night, and I'm sure the rain does not help. And a walk through Chinatown would not be complete without passing by the iconic fruit stands. The sweet, juicy fragrance of fruit will fill you up as you walk by. It's much preferred over the swampy rat essence mixed with pee that you otherwise would get in New York City. So even though we've already got some dim sum leftovers in hand, another Chinatown habit of mine at this point is never leaving without my favorite to-go item, Chinese roasted meats, which is meat in its most heavenly, juiciest form in my opinion. I'm slightly biased because I grew up on this stuff, so my taste buds have adapted, I'm sure, and in Chinatown you can get it from a few spots, but for me, I prefer from Hehe Roasted. If you've been to any Chinatown, you most likely have walked by restaurants with dangling meats in their front windows, and that, my friend, means you have hit the jackpot for Chinese roasted meats, which include classics like char siu, barbecue pork, suya, crispy roast pork buckwheat, and roast duck. And it's a slightly pick and choose your own adventure where you can pick your quantity of each meat. And spots like Hehe are popular for their lunch boxes too, where you can get some meat over rice with some veggies at a pretty decent price, like $15, which is the going fast casual lunch rate in New York City at this point. So with a pound of char siu and a half pound of crispy roast pork belly, two of my faves because I'm a pork loving gal, I'm very excited about knowing what I'll be eating for the next few days. Now it's time to go get dry. See you next time.